Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're continuing with Saturnastra. This is chapter 15, 1-5, Closed Casket. Year 11, month 3, day 3, 13:30 p.m. After he finished eating, Archie went back inside the castle to break the news in private to the Duke. The Duke did not sound too surprised. After all, he was a dragon. It was about damn time he started acting like one. He only worried about the funerals he would have to hold later on tonight. The coroner and his attendant had a hard time making the bodies look presentable. A good number of them were missing an ear, a nose, or the eyes, and the majority's faces clearly had bite marks. And his bite marks were sharp, clean, and jagged, and it was a gory sight to behold. All the bodies were stitched together to form one solid cadaver, and to keep the family members from asking too many questions, the coroner decided on having several closed caskets, and to make certain no one would get curious, the caskets were nailed shut. The official excuse was that the crystal knight had shot a fireball spell which had burned and disfigured the bodies, and some of the noble wives were prone to arguing. However, the Duke quickly put them back in line. And in the future, whenever a massive death occurred, they would host group funerals, and the caskets would be paraded around town and eventually brought to the graveyard. And since it was such an unusual death, the Duke hurried up the funerals, and instead of burying the bodies after a day's wake, the Duke only allowed the family members 2 hours of mourning before having the bodies quickly taken to the cemetery. And while the coroner worked on the bodies, the workers in town dug shallow graves, and everything about the proceeding was outside protocol. And the Duke did not even wait for the family members to bury tombstones for the night, and not only this had everyone suspicious. And currently the priest of Artsy was performing a short 10-minute version of the funeral rites, and he was present at the wake, and all who wore solemn red attires, and in the continent of Bersamet, blood red was the color of mourning. And this had been chosen, and this became the chosen color of death because of the creature known as blood red. And even Archie was now wearing his jester attire, and without his costume, Archie looked as somber as those gathered there. And the only person not wearing such attire was he, and he wore a somber black medieval attire without any laces or frill, and the Morris imagined that he was too simple to mourn for people he barely knew. And he did understand, however, in our world, black was the color we sported at funerals. And the funeral took place in the courtyard, and the coffins were simple and made planks of wood and nailed together, and normally the nobles would get fancier coffins. However, the coffins there hung wreaths of irises and other purple flowers, and the only light came from the freshly lighted torches in the courtyard and the candles held by the priest's sleepy attendants, and the torches held by the designated male relatives. And despite of his best effort, 95 knights did not survive Alpha's attack. And as they walk in the fields of irises, be confident that they know peace, and they feel no pain or sorrow, and nothing else can harm them, and all that remains is a peaceful slumber. And Artsy will give them eternal rest, said the priest, who wore blood-red robes. And the crowd echoed, Artsy give them eternal rest. From where he stood, he could barely see the top of the priest's hood, and he gave a sigh of frustration before tapping at the shoulder of a knight who stood before him. And another knight said, "Shh, quiet, oh wait, it's you. What do you want?" And this black knight was twice at his size and was sorely responsible for blocking at his view. And like a little child, he stretched his hands and said, Up, please. Pretty please, ugly please. And the black knight rolled his eyes, and he picked up a heat, and from this new vantage point, and he was able to see the rest of the ceremony. And something about the strange hair of the night made his mystic eyes start acting up, and he did not pay attention to any other proceedings, and he watched with great amusement the ungrateful dead sobbing over their bodies. And like most of the recently deceased, they were still getting used to the idea that they were now dead, and a good number of them had faded away already, and their knights were curious fellows, and in life they had laughed in the face of death, and they were too proud to even consider the possibility of dying anywhere except in their deathbed. And even with all the wars, they carried themselves in a fashion akin to gods or immortal, and they took life for granted almost as if it was going to last forever. And these men took death the hardest, and they were too stubborn to believe that they were dead. And he admired these knights, and he looked forward to seeing them again in their next life. And most to his chagrin, a presence entered the room, and the priest Victor was bringing something most wicked. And he heard the sound of his approach, and as the sound grew closer, he heard a soft whisper, and it sounded like the sound of a candle being blown out, and the whisper turned into a humming, and the humming to a song, and the song was composed of only vowels which broke into a hiss at the end. And the Gararasa glided down from the roof and started circling over the coffin, and the robes that the god wore were long and violet, and they hovered in a strange fashion as if the god was on the water. And he had a humanoid face, and his eyes were completely black and had no eyelids, and they almost seemed to be completely hollowed out. And his nose too was absent, and it looked like the host of a skull. And his hair had the same color as the top of his skin, and it seemed to be pressed into his neck, and the hands were hidden beneath frilly sleeves which were scaly, and the surface had a nice shimmery golden brown color. And his legs were longer than those of a human, and his neck too was slightly longer. And the way he floated, and it mimicked the movements of a snake moving through the grass, and eventually Arasa landed on top of the first coffin. And had he any eyelids, he would have looked like a sleepy fellow. And he placed his hands to his mouth, and he yawned, and he was able to see his sharp teeth. And with his presence, the vibrant night saw relaxed, and they were filled with the same tranquil lethargy as all of the other dead comrades. And he frowned, and Arasa was taking all of the fire out of the knives. And Castor said to Ahi, "Death gods are such a pain, and you would think that they were the god himself the way that they parade their powers." Ahi, still staring at Arasa, whispered, "Arasa, death, no life after life." And then I came, and he asked, "What are you staring at?" And his eyes suddenly changed to cyan color, and it was such a sudden change that then I looked at the reflection in his eye, and in there he saw Arasa sitting on top of the coffin, and when he looked up, he was surprised to see Arasa in the flesh. And Arasa yawned and gave those gathered there one smile, and the smile was more for Ahi and the Black Knight. And Arasa realized that they were able to perceive him, and Arasa then waved his hand in a friendly salute, and the dead knight's souls were corroding on the ground, and in time they turned to violet flowers. And Castor said to the knight, you shouldn't have looked into my eyes, and now you will always see Arasa. It matters not, death god or not, we are used to seeing death, and Arasa simply does it up, and even he is destined to die one day. His divinity won't change that, said the knight carrying Ahi. How astute, commented Castor. Not really, and just a berserker, and we see the world for what it really is, and no one can lie to us, not even ourselves, said the knight sadly. Because that's how the berserker curse works. That it's not only do they can tell when somebody's lying to them, they see truth. They see past all of the illusions of the world, for better or for worse. That's why they have a short fuse, because being able to see the truth all the time, it just puts you in a foul mood. Ignorance is bliss, said Ahi in imitation of someone, and Arasa picked the flower which the knights had become, and he went away in the same whimsical manner he had arrived. And Ahi said in a ominous tone, "Blind God Arasa." And then I shook his head, and he knew that Ahi spoke the truth, however he did not understand what Ahi meant by blind God. And in answer to his question, Castor said, "It means that he thinks he's the god of death, and he cannot see that things would die with him or without him." "I see," said the knight thoughtfully. And the conversation was interrupted by the movement of the crowd, and since the funeral was packed, Ahi and the knight were forced to follow the funeral procession to the cemetery. And the night was clear and Titanless night, and this allowed for the people to see the stars and the smaller moons in the sky belt. And the constellation of Libra was slowly making its way to its zenith. And shadowing Libra was the ever watchful constellation of Cancer. And Ahi noted that the Libra scales at night were slightly tilted towards the left, and this observation made the child frown, and even for us this omen did not bode well. Just where was the true body of Libra? And it was pointless for us to think about it, and the cemetery was located in the outskirts of the town surrounding the ruined church, and violet flowers grew all over the ground, and a single dead willow tree casted an ominous shadow over the freshly dug graves. And the undertaker lowered the coffins into the graves and quickly threw dirt over the gaping hole. And on the way back to the castle, the noble spoke in harsh whispers, and they wondered why the bodies were so quickly buried away. And neither the coroner nor his assistants seemed inclined to betray Ahi's secret. And they knew the nobles would grow weary of Ahi if they found out of his taste for freshly killed humans. And those who knew considered themselves lucky Ahi had not gotten hungry up until that moment. And the duke smiled as he entered the castle gates, and in the last year he had his thought about Ahi's true diachronic nature, and the sudden burst of cannibalism, or should we say carnivore instincts, proved the duke that Ahi was a true dragon. and the only person who remained in the graveyard after everyone was left was a he. And when he felt he was completely alone, he started smelling the freshly dug graves. And when he found the smell he liked, he started clawing at the ground. And when he was halfway down, a cold wind carried a familiar scent. And he looked up and he smiled. Alright, that's the end of that chapter.